Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Zuri Group is a full-service consulting agency that works exclusively with nonprofits, from peer-to-peer fundraising, website design and development, digital advertising and Google Grants account maintenance, to fundraising strategy, systems assessments and selections, full-scale CRM implementations, and everything in between. We are passionate about helping nonprofits use technology to build better relationships with their constituents and maximize their impact. My name is Lo, and I'm a digital marketing consultant here at Zuri Group, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat for your questions or technology issues today. For today's webinar, we're joined by Skeff Flynn, an Engaging Networks accredited partner for account services. Skeff turns project plans and client wish lists into reality, so we're in great hands today for a session on best practices for engaging networks. As I mentioned, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat today for questions, so please don't be shy. Skeff, would you like to go ahead and get us started?
Absolutely. Let's just kind of take a second to talk about what we're going to go over today. So the three sort of main components of our webinar are what's new in engaging networks. I think there's been some innovation and evolution to the platform over the past year or two, and so many of you who have been sort of working day to day may have missed some of the new features, or there may just be some things that are kind of hidden from view that might make your life easier. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those things. Then we'd like to spend a few minutes on talking about some of the perks of being a Zen customer. Here at the Zuri Group, we want to make sure that you're successful and that you can get the most out of the tools that you have. And so there are a couple of things that we just want to talk about, some that are new, some that we want to sort of remind you of that I think will help you in terms of getting the most out of the platform. And then, of course, we want to talk about getting the most out of the platform. I'm assuming that everyone on this call is a current Engaging Networks customer. If not, welcome, and you'll get to see some of the insides of the product. But if you are a current Engaging Networks customer, I think there are some things that have come along that will help you to leverage the product. And if you're paying for it, you might as well get the most out of it that you can. So let's go ahead and get into part one, what's new in engaging networks. So the first thing that I wanted to touch base on is householding. I know that many of you have been looking for ways to identify supporters that are in the same household. The primary use case, of course, is spousal relationships, but there may be others. There may be parents of children, things like this. And so tying records together, how do we do that? So one of the exciting new features that Engaging Networks has come out with within the last year is a householding feature. So we're going to start by just taking a quick look at how do we turn this on. So we're going to go into our account settings. And in our account preferences, we're going to want to make sure that we have this householding, allow supporters to be linked through relationship types. We're going to want to make sure that we have that checkbox checked. Right? So then once we do, let's go ahead and take a look at the supporter record and how we could take advantage of that. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to take a look at this supporter record. And the first thing that we're going to want to do, if we haven't done this already, is that we're going to want to add our household gadgets. So that's just right up here at the top of our screen. When we're looking at a record, we're going to click Add Gadget, and we're going to click the household relationship. And we'll save that, and then we'll come back in and we'll click Household Activities. So once we've added those gadgets, you're probably familiar with other gadgets that we have, like the transaction history. We're going to scroll on down and take a look. So here's our household relationship, and I'm going to add a relationship. And in this case, I'm going to add a colleague of mine. I'm going to add Kim. So we'll search for that record, and here we have good old Kim Test. So I'm going to link that, and as I said, it's a colleague. So this screen is important because you can see that we have sort of a set of predefined relationships. And of course, we can add others. There is some amount of customization that's possible, but your most common relationship types are selectable here. So in this case, I'm going to select colleague, and I'm going to save that. You can also link records through import. So if this is something that you think you want to take advantage of, and you have a great big batch of records, for example, that are spousal relationships, or that that are just general familial relationships, and you want to get those links established without coming into each record, you can do that through import. So I would say if that's something you want to do, reach out to support, let us know, and we'll be happy to help take you through that process. So now that we have this relationship established, what can we see? So if we go down to our household activities gadget here, and we click on our little gear icon for our settings, we can go ahead and look at gifts to date, and we can look at email activity and advocacy activity. So if we save that, you'll see that Kim and I both have gifts in this account, and so we can see the total of our gifts, which are almost certainly testing, would be a grand total of $19. So this gives you a way to see activity summaries in a household consisting of linked records. Again, in this case, we don't have any email or advocacy activity, but this gives you an idea of what you can look at. And if we were to sort of take that down to the summary level, then you'll just see the number of gifts. We'll also take a quick look at our transaction history gadget. This gadget has been updated. This is probably one that many of you are familiar with. The purpose, of course, is exactly what it says. This is a history of all of the transactions that I have in this particular Engaging Networks account. And the nice thing that they have added to this gadget is the ability to, right from this screen, go ahead and download either transaction history information or supporter information. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. Okay, and so if I go ahead and open that file, you can see that this is all of the transactions that we were just viewing, with all of the additional information that you would get if you were to run a traditional transaction export through the export section of the product. So, for example, we have our, what were our gateways and all of the typical transaction information. Similarly, if we wanted to download just the supporter information, we could do that from here. And then that's just going to give us our standard contact information. And so you can see that here. So first, last, address, credit card holder name, all of that kind of good stuff.
Skeff and Kim, I think I've got a question for you.
Absolutely.
We've got someone who would like to know if it's possible to update credit cards or if they still have to resubmit the donation.
It is possible to update credit cards. You do not have to resubmit the donation. Let's see. I wonder if I have a good example of a recurring gift that we could use. So I don't have a great example handy. But what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have the recurring donation gadget enabled when you're looking at your supporter. And if you're using one of the payment processors that has the what we would call the deep integration, Vantiv comes to mind as one. I believe PaySafe is another. Using that recurring donation gadget, you should be able to click on the recurring donation itself and drill into that recurring instance, and you can update the credit card information there. Please feel free to email me directly, and I'd be happy to walk you through it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Skeff.
All right. So moving on from the transaction history gadget, the next thing that I wanted to cover is something called export groups. And this is kind of a good segue, as we said, with this transaction history. If you were to run this out of our standard data export section, so if you're not familiar, we'd be going to data and export. We would set up some sort of a query, and just as an example, if we were to do, let's say everyone who had come through a donation form, right? So if we do all donation pages, and we go to do a transaction export, we're going to end up with a lot of fields. So I've pulled some of these kind of in advance of this webinar. So typically what you'll get when you do a transaction export is you'll get every single contact field that's available in your account along with the transaction information. And that's great if you're really looking for that level of information, but it can just be a little bit overwhelming and it can be a little cluttered. So using transaction groups, I'm going to show you an example here, which is a smaller subset. You can choose what of that contact information you want. So in this case, I've just chosen title, first name, middle, last name, email. And that way your export is a lot less cluttered, right? So you can get to the data that you want without having to include every single field. So let's take a look at how we would set that up. So if we go back into our account settings and we look at our account data structure, in our account data structure, of course, this is where we would add or remove all of the available supporter fields. And you'll notice that at the top here, we have this export group button. So we can create a group just by clicking add group. In this particular account, I have one called all contact fields, which is the sort of a set of the most common fields available. And then I have this short set, which is what I just demoed. And the way that you would create one of these, again, you would hit add group, and then you just sort of go through and highlight the fields that you want to keep. So when we do our actual export, and we'll take that same example of doing everyone who has come through a donation form, and this is just now in a test account, we'll choose transaction, and then we can choose our export group here. So if we just want that small subset, we can use our short set. If we want all contact fields, which is actually a smaller subset than everything, we can use that. If we leave it blank, again, you're going to get every single field in your account. I should probably also clarify at this point, when you're doing an export, if you do user data, you will just get supporter information. You will not get any transactional information, even if you are doing a query like everyone who's coming through a donation page. So transaction then, of course, is a little more useful because it will include your supporter data as well as those transactional fields. Hybrid is one that I personally don't find as useful. It will concatenate a lot of the transactional data into a single entry. So I would recommend sticking with either the transaction export or the user data export. And let's take another look at one of these transactional exports just to highlight that if you have, let's say, like an honor memorial donation or something to that effect, you might actually get more than one row for a single transaction, right? So for, let's see, this is probably a good example, that we might have a transaction type that corresponds to a check. We might have a transaction type that corresponds to credit card, and then so on and so on. I actually don't have any honor memorials in here, so perhaps not the best example. But the point is that you'll get a row in your transaction export that will correspond to different components of the transaction. So one transaction may actually generate several rows. You will also get rejected or failed transactions in your export, and you may also see test data in your export. We do have a knowledge base article in the Zuri Group support portal that has a link to a file that describes what each of these transaction types mean. So FCS is going to be a single credit, FCR is going to be a recurring, etc. So if you want to find out more about what each of those transaction types corresponds to, visit our knowledge base.
Skep, I've got another question for you and Kim. Does peer-to-peer fundraising history show up in this transaction report, or is that found in a different report?
That's an excellent question. And there's sort of a two-part answer. The first thing is that yes, if you were to, in this case, I've queried strictly on donation forms, but if we were to set up our query to query on those peer-to-peer, you can export transactional data through this interface. So if I go back and I edit my query, so let's go ahead and remove our all donation pages, and instead we have for peer-to-peer, we have peer-to-peer registrants or peer-to-peer donors. So just for this example, let's use peer-to-peer donors, and let's see, I think these look like events that will probably have some data in it. We can check to see if there's good data in it by previewing our query. Okay, so those do not have good results, and that may be because some of the payments may not have been approved. But the point being that, assuming that we have data here, you can actually export that data using this data and reports export transaction feature. I would recommend, particularly pretty soon here, not relying on that as your primary source of reporting. I don't have this ready to show you at this moment because I'm not logged into our dev environment, but we are planning a release within the next month to 2 months. So either near the end of this month or at some point in September is our goal. We're overhauling the reporting tools in the peer-to-peer fundraising module, and they will be a lot more flexible than they were in the previous iteration. So I would actually recommend that while you're managing your event and sort of in the middle of your fundraising, that you look to those updated peer-to-peer fundraising reports that will be available within the next month to month and a half. And I would rely on this data and reports export function more if you're trying to compare historical data from different events, maybe year over year. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think they were just wondering also if there's one query that will show peer-to-peer donations and all of the donations in one report.
Yes. So again, in this particular account, I don't know that I have the best data to demonstrate this, but let me show you how I would set up a query. Right? So I might say, okay, here's a peer-to-peer event, and let me also add in all donation pages. So now what I've said is, let me get everyone who's come through a donation page, and let me get everyone who's come through this particular peer-to-peer event. And you can add multiple peer-to-peer events as you go. Again, this is a sort of a sandbox account that we use for some testing, and I don't know that it has the greatest data set to demonstrate the end results, but this would be the how you get at that data.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. So then the next sort of update that I wanted to highlight that I know has been something that people have been curious about in our pages, manage pages section, we now have a bit of an audit trail on some of our pages. So for example, if we were to come and look at a given page, we could see, okay, who was the last person who edited this, right? Let's see if I have one. Here we go. This one has a little bit more activity. And so this just gives you an idea. Let's say you have a range of levels of tech savviness in your organization, and you have a change to a form, and something is either really good or really bad. And so you want to find out, okay, well, who made that change? Now you can come in and you can kind of get an idea of who was the last person to edit the form. And that, can help in, again, identifying if something was really good. Okay, well, we know that we need to talk to this colleague to say, how did you figure that out? And can you share some of those, knowledge and ideas with us? Or, if something broke, you can say, okay, well, this is a training opportunity. I need to go talk to Xavier. All right. So if any of you were here for one of my previous webinars, you may remember good old Burrito Cat. We're gonna use him as an example again, and I'm gonna start by deleting him because I've already resized it in this case. So let's go ahead and upload him. I know for myself, I do a lot of work in terms of building email, and one of the common challenges, particularly with Outlook, is to get images sized appropriately for the email, and then to have them stay at that size when you actually send your email. I traditionally had recommended as a best practice resizing the image outside of Engaging Networks. Engaging Networks now has some tools for us where we can actually resize the image here. And there are a couple of cool things that I want to show you, and a couple of gotchas that I want you to be on the lookout for as well. So we're, of course, in our image library under Pages, Components, Images, and Files. And we're going to go ahead and click this pencil icon. And we have now a really kind of useful set of tools. So our first thing is that we could crop this image if we wanted to. Most useful in my mind, of course, is this resize feature. There are some touch-up tools as well as some kind of nifty filters if you want to put a different look on things. So we'll not spend a whole lot of time on the filters. I want to focus mostly on the resize, but do want you to know that there are actually some pretty cool options here. Okay, so if we're going to resize, and actually let me cancel that filter. I may have to actually just back out and get back in. There we go. Okay, so if we focus on the resizing here, you can obviously specify a height and a width. This lock icon is significant, and what it does is it locks the aspect ratio. So if I lock that, it means that if I resize the image, it will keep the same proportions and won't distort. So if I take this down to 300, you can see, good old Burrito Cat is not stretched or deformed, he's just smaller now. And if I save this and get out of here, when I come back in, our image will, did not save. Aha, so that's gotcha number one. Let's go back through that again. So we'll go to the resize, we will hit our lock button, we'll go to 300, we'll save here, and then we'll scroll down and save here. This, I think many of you are probably familiar by now. In Engaging Networks, there's often more than one place you need to hit the save button, and it is sometimes not obvious on your screen. So you've seen me falling victim to this. It's a good reminder for you as well to look for those extra save buttons. And now if we get out and we come back in, we can see that my changes have been saved. Another gotcha that I wanted to look at was if we're actually working in an email, and we'll just go ahead and create a new one. And this would also be true if you were working in a page, for example, and let's just go from a blank email. So if we were to insert a new image here, and we'll stick with good old Burrito Cat. And so we've got to come back over and select him. Since I uploaded the same file with the same file name, we can see that we've gone back to 1600 by 1200. Okay, so if I go back and edit him again, and I do my resize, and I lock my aspect ratio, and I set him to 300, and I save, and then I go ahead and insert. It does change. I guess where I've run into this before is making the mistake I made a second ago, which is not hitting that second save button. That if you miss that here, again, you can end up with the width and height being what they were originally. Another update that has happened since I gave my last webinar on particularly email and talked about image sizing is that even if you're not using these resizing tools that are now available in the image library, if you use the pixel measurement, again, even without using the resizing tools available to you in the image library, the tool will now write these as HTML attributes. So if I insert this image and look at the source, I know this may be getting into the weeds for some people, but it will now write that as a height attribute and as a width attribute, in addition to writing it as a style. The advantage to this is that Outlook will respect height and width attributes. Outlook will not respect this style. But what that means is that even if you're not using the resizing tools, if you are changing the height and width using the pixel measurement, Outlook will now respect that as a means of resizing an image. All right. So I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about in sort of what's new in EN is something that's not actually here yet, but is something that's coming, and I think we're pretty excited about it on our side, which is there will be an SMS broadcast text feature, allowing you the ability to actually text your supporters. I don't have a solid release date on that at this time. We're still sort of waiting to see what that's going to look like. But one thing that I did want to point out is that if you are not currently collecting cell phone as a separate data point from primary phone or business phone, we think that you should be. So for, I think, anyone who's a Zen customer, we have by default several different phone types. We have phone number, business phone, cell phone in your sort of default support record is what they used to call it. Now they call it the account data structure. But just wanted to put out there that, again, if you're not collecting cell phone or mobile phone as a separate data point from primary phone number, we think that you should be. There are tools coming that will allow you to leverage that SMS texting feature, but in order to be able to use that down the road, you want to start preparing by making sure that you're collecting that data, specifically mobile phone, as separate from home phone or business phone.
That's very cool.
Yes, Yes, it's coming. Hopefully Q1, but I don't want to, I don't want to commit when I don't have a solid release date from Engaging Networks as of yet. As we find out more, we will certainly be sharing that information via email or potentially through another webinar. So that's the last of our sort of first section of what's new in Engaging Networks. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is perks, Zen Solution perks. If you are a Zen customer, we want you to be successful. And so there's just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about sort of along that line. And the first one is this concept of covering the credit card processing fee. I'd like to show you Johnson County, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Johnson County. This is their primary donation form that you would see if you visit their website. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, we have an add 4% of my account or my amount to cover transaction fees. So if we click this, you'll notice my donation just upped from 100 to 104. Many of you are probably already familiar with this feature. This is something that is already available in the peer-to-peer module. So this is just a demo for kids' sake. And if I go through this and fill out my information, okay. So you'll notice, of course, in peer-to-peer, this is something that we built into the product and released within the last year. So we can check that box and it will automatically up my donation. It'll give me a little bit of an upsell. And I should probably show you how to do that because that, of course, is native to the product. So we're going to go to peer-to-peer and we're going to get into one of our events, click edit, and this upsell is in our options, fundraising, and it's this donation processing fee. So you can just toggle that on or off, and then you can set the percentage. So again, this is something that's built into the peer-to-peer fundraising module, but what we have decided to do is for all of our Zen Solutions customers, we will be offering this as a free upgrade as part of your annual support maintenance contract. So if this is something that you would like, certainly let us know, except I should probably back up one more step. We're excited to announce that we have a summer cleanup project for our Zen Solutions customers, which is sort of the foundation of a number of these things. So in our summer cleanup, we will be going through all of our Zen Solutions customers' accounts, and we will be making sure that you have sort of the latest and greatest things if you want them. So the first thing would be if you want to add this cover the transaction fee to your donation form as part of our summer cleanup, you can tell us yes or no, and we will be happy to add that for you. You can specify the percentage. On the donation forms, this is not native, but this is something that we have built for other customers, and so we have decided to offer that as part of your annual support contract. If you are not a Zen Solutions customer, and this is something that you're interested in adding to your donation forms, please reach out to us and we will be happy to get you a quote.
Skeff, you mentioned that this was for donation forms. Is it for all donation forms or only donations coming through peer-to-peer?
Excellent question, and I probably wasn't clear on that. For donations coming through peer-to-peer, this functionality is actually baked into the product. It's built in. It's something that we released within the last year, and it's something that you can turn on in your peer-to-peer module yourself by coming to options, fundraising, and toggling it on or off and setting the fee. So it's just built into the product for the peer-to-peer module. We are also, as part of our summer cleanup project, now offering this to you, our Zen Solutions customers, for your Engaging Networks regular donation forms, right? So if you would like to have this added to your standard donation form, there is a little bit of custom work involved, but it's something that we've decided that frankly you guys deserve for continuing to be Zen Solutions customers. And so when we contact you as part of the summer cleanup, one of the questions that we'll be asking you is if you do want this, and if so, what the transaction fee you would like to include is.
Can this be used on ticketed events as well?
Currently, no. Ticketed events have a little bit more complexity, and this is something that we have not yet built for ticketed events. Certainly, if anyone is interested in pursuing that for their ticketed events, we would be interested in discussing that. We could certainly get you a quote. I would also say that if there is interest and, for example, if more than one agency was interested in and sort of wanted to split some of those development costs, that's certainly something that we would entertain. If you're interested in the possibility of adding this to a ticketed event, please reach out to either myself or Kim Everett. So that would be skeff@zurigroup.com or kim@zurigroup.com. And we'd be happy to talk about that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So continuing with this idea of our summer cleanup project, in my last webinar, I think I mentioned that we were rolling out new broadcast email templates for our Zen Solutions customers. And those are available. I know that some of you are taking advantage of those. There's sort of a light version and a dark version in keeping with the current branding from National. The advantage to using these templates is simply that they've been thoroughly tested. So what we're looking at right now is a software program called Email on Acid, and it will render email code among multiple different email clients. So for example, these are different, this is what the email template will look like on many iPhones. As we kind of go further, we get into our desktop. You can see that Lotus Notes, that doesn't look so good, but we're not really designing the Lotus Notes at this point because I don't know anyone who uses it. But in all of our versions of Outlook, it looks very consistent. There's very little standardization between email providers, Outlook being the worst offender. And so the idea of using good templates is that you come up with a template, you test it, you test it, you test it, you make sure that it's as consistent as it possibly can be among the most popular email clients. And from there, you can go ahead and use it and reuse it on a consistent basis, plug your content in, and know that it's pretty much going to look more or less the same, whether you're looking at it on AOL or on Firefox, or you're looking at it on Outlook on desktop, or you're looking at it on an iPhone. So as part of our summer cleanup project, we will be making sure that those email templates are available for you. And I'm pretty excited to announce that we've done something similar with our event templates. One of the things that we have heard from some of our affiliates is that they would have some anomalous behavior with the ticketed event module. And what we came to realize was that there was not the best error handling in some of the templates that were previously in use. We've gone ahead and made sure that we have templates available now that have good error handling. So for example, if I go to, well, hold on, sorry, I think I had that window open for too long, so let me refresh my page. So what we have done is that we've made sure that if we encounter an error now, for example, if I don't fill in the required fields, that we actually get clear and readily visible error messaging, so that the user knows what they're missing. One of the things that was sometimes problematic with some of our older templates was that not all error messages would display consistently. So they might get an error, they might not. If they did not get an error, it might look like the page had refreshed or something to that effect, which is just a very frustrating user experience. So the newer event templates that we have will certainly eliminate that problem. Obviously, these are test events that are designed more so I can see that we're formatting the CSS properly than they are to look great. But you can plug in whatever content relevant to your event and build them in with the flexibility that you're used to in building page builder ticketed events. But you can be assured with the new templates that, one, they will be consistent with Nationals branding, and two, that you will get error messaging consistently and clearly if an error is encountered. So again, as part of our summer cleanup, we're going to make sure that you have these templates available to you. I would like to say that this is something that we'll be starting within about the next week. If you have an event that is coming up and you really want to make sure that you can leverage these templates sooner rather than later, let us know. That can help us in terms of our prioritization. Obviously we will not be able to upgrade everyone all at once. It will be a process. So if you're anxious to use email templates, for example, please let us know. We can sort of bump you up the list. So anything that is time sensitive, where you think that leveraging some of these new perks would be advantageous, please let us know, and that will help us to prioritize our cleanup process. All right. So I think that covers the things that I wanted to go over in terms of the perks for you. So I wanted to kind of wrap up with just a few thoughts. Are you getting the most out of engaging networks? I know that there are certainly some affiliates out there who may use engaging networks for peer-to-peer, but maybe they don't use them for broadcast email, or maybe they have an event that they run that's a gala or a raffle or something like this that they're running outside of engaging networks. And I would just encourage you to think about some of these things. Are you using other systems that really engaging networks could accomplish that goal? One of the great things about bringing things together in engaging networks is keeping your data in one place. If you're sending email out of MailChimp, for example, well, you lose some of that interaction data that you could be capturing in engaging networks. You could be seeing in engaging networks, oh, this supporter is actively engaged. They've opened the last of the emails that we've sent to them. And you don't get that level of integration if you're using disparate systems. Similarly, if you're running a raffle outside of engaging networks, if you were to bring that in, so that everything's in one place, you could say, okay, this supporter, I can see that they bought a raffle ticket for this event that we run in the summer, and then they were also a Bowl for Kids' Sake participant in the spring. And so you get a much more concise view of your supporters' engagement that way. Not to mention cost, right? Engaging networks is something that you're paying for, and if you can eliminate a cost, from using another system that maybe has a redundant functionality that engaging networks could handle, then that's more money that you can put towards your organization's mission and helping to make matches and things of that sense. I really believe that some of the image resizing tools combined with the new email templates make engaging networks email far more user-friendly than it was even a year ago. So again, I would just encourage you to think, okay, do we have other systems and other costs that really engaging networks could tackle that same objective? And if there are some requirements that may be unique, I mentioned raffles, I mentioned galas, if there are requirements that are maybe a little unique to your event and you're not sure if engaging networks could fill that role, reach out. I'm at skeff@zurigroup.com, and I'm always happy to think through challenges and what are requirements for an event, what are the gaps, what can we do, and if we can't do something exactly the way another system would do it, well, how would we do it and how would we make it work? So if you have those types of questions, please feel free to contact me. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on was the concept of marketing automation. This is something that you probably hear about with a certain amount of regularity. We're obviously kind of getting near the end of our time, and marketing automation can be a whole world unto itself. And I plan to host a webinar on marketing automation. What is it? How do we set it up? How do we use it strategically? How do we leverage the power of marketing automation? And I don't really have time to go into all of that today, but even something as simple as a welcome series can be very powerful in terms of saving you work and engaging with your supporters. So this is a really simple workflow that we're looking at here. And so, as we said, it's a welcome series. So our criteria for who gets the automation is new records, right? So let's say someone donates for the first time, and they were not in your system before, or they subscribed to your newsletter for the first time. They were not in your system before. This particular marketing automation, again, very simple. It runs every day at 9, says, okay, I've got a match, I've got a new supporter. Let's wait 2 days, because if it's a new donor, they just got a confirmation email. Or if it's a new subscriber, they just got a confirmation email. But in 2 days, let's just send them a welcome email that says, hey, thanks for signing up. Thanks for becoming part of our organization's mailing list or our organization's supporter base or our family. And then let's end the journey there, because that's all we're trying to accomplish with a very simple welcome series. And so something as simple as this can take the work away from your staff of having to reach out to those new folks and still make those new supporters feel engaged and feel welcome. So again, marketing automation, I think, is a really powerful tool that you really can leverage in both very simple and very complex ways to help your organization. And again, I will be doing a webinar in the coming months on some more of a deep dive on marketing automation and how to leverage it. But just wanted to get you thinking about it, because again, even something as simple as, hey, let's send a new supporter an email 2 days after they have entered our system is something that really can help improve engagement with your supporter base. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come and listen to me discuss some of these things today.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please do feel free to submit them. We can certainly follow up with you via email. So I think that just about brings us to the end of our time together today. But I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. And Skeff, thank you for walking us through all of the new functionality that's available in Engaging Networks and all of the great perks that are available to Zen Solutions clients. If you guys would like to be notified when we have new webinars, like the couple that Skeff teased for marketing automation and SMS broadcasts available through Engaging Networks, hopefully next year, please go ahead and sign up for our mailing list at zurigroup.com/subscribe. And we hope to see you again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.